So this test that I did, you're looking for a consistent, smooth transition. Now, granted, without a densitometer, we won't be able to tell if these numbers up here are accurate, like 100% accurate, but we can tell that there's a difference, an improvement, and you can hold the screens better than these small dots that are going to show up here. I'm showing you in a second. But this is important to note. You see how it's not till down here that we actually get as into the dark range. Across here is between here and here is pretty consistent, not that bad. I mean, not that good for us, because it should be transitioning into a darker and darker and darker and darker. So we want some dots up here, and we want some dots open up here in the shadow tones, but solid at this very end. The problem that you see here is like right there is a dark spot. And so that's going to throw off our information that's in our shadow tones, the heavier percentage range, which causes some problems on press in the print because it's just not able to get accurate no matter what the press operators do. So, and then I'll blow up on this and show you what is happening. You see this circle here? This is a telltale sign. Again, should be a smooth transition, and this should be really dark out here on the edge. But you get that ring. That's what this is right here. This ring is right into the 80% range, 70 to 80, somewhere in that area. So it creates this halo effect out there. And then look at this in the positive side of that. You can see that there's a bullet hole in the center, and it just doesn't transition out smooth. It leaves that ring down again. This would be getting down into the 70% range area, which is that right there. Notice up in here, the important factors is the shadow tones and in the highlight ranges. You see this square is a little bolder. That's geared toward trying to get it to be held in the screen. That's your target area, the 3%. You won't really or should not expect to get the 1 and the 2%, but because I've beefed it up in my version, you can see a little difference there. Here, you start to see some gray between when I toggle back and forth, not that one, but between the two. And you can see the color shift. So there's more area opened up here in the shadow tones, but it's also more consistent. See this smoother transition? I would still go back in and tweak what my curves are that I had put in for the new curve and start to improve on this. And that's why I need this test, this visual, to notice the transition, make sure it starts to, at the 50% zone, it really starts to get dark consistently. And this area here would be much darker. Not much darker, but darker than what you see here. Although, this also compensates for dot gain in the shadow tones also. So I want to get a little bit better improvement here, but not too much, because there is going to be dot gain. So let's blow up on this. And you can see down in this shadow tone, this is really what we want to see. 100% solid black, no dots in there. And this is fine. You can't expect to get, this is what's going to happen on press. And actually, like, really the 95% dot will start to fill in. But you see we got clear, we're giving ourselves a chance is what we're doing here. we've got a clear opening on the 95, 96, 97. Down in the 98, it's going to fill in solid, of course. But, so then you go all the way up here to the, well, let me show you back the comparison between what we're getting at the 100% with the new curve and the 100% with the current curve that we have been using for many years. So even your solid areas on the screen, it's getting imaged onto the screen with not 100% solid blacks. So that's very odd. And I saw that in the curves, but I just didn't know how to understand why someone moved it to that degree. But as you see, it's right there between the 96 and the 97. There's a big jump. So essentially, this is essentially filling in, never even attempting to try and achieve that 97%. And, you know, I'm trying to say reach for the stars and maybe you'll get to the moon. And then because we're not expected to, you know, hold these dots, you're never going to see those dots on print, even down into this range. But here there's a big jump, even between these three. Like that's you know, that's like 5% difference between this one and this one. So you go up to the highlight dots and you look at those and you see there's some junk in there that'll never hold. This is where you reached the maximum capability of even the printer itself. And that's why you get these little patterns that you start to see, because it just can't image it all. And then it starts to get a little heavier, 2%. But really, when they burn this screen, it's losing clear up into the 7 and 8% dots. So that's is on the current curves that we're using. Now look at the new ones. You see there's clear dots held there at that 1%. We're expecting to hold this 3%, and that's why it's a little beefier, because I want to indicate that that's the target. With that outline on there. But, you know, that's going to hold very well. So I know that this has, I've tested this out on several different jobs, select jobs that are like simulated process, multicolor, you know, 10, 12 color prints that were for the race tees. Those separations, I've seen that they've come out a little better. And so we're definitely going to hold the 5% dot. Now if you're going to go back to the other one and you look at the other 5% dot, it's clearly there, but it's also at a small point where the by the time they expose it and wash it out, the washing out will lose those dots. And then you're definitely not even going to hold them, because remember, in the emulsion, this is a negative area where the ink must flow through that tiny little dot. So that's why we want to beef those up a little, like we have here. So you get my point. You can see this in this gradation bar. It's, you know, right down there is like the 98, 99% range, and then there's obviously a solid fill in. This is what you could expect to fill in right about here, solid on press. Now, when we have See how close these negative dots are? That's ink. The black is going to be ink that surrounds that. And when you stroke the ink on there with one stroke, you're still going to get fill in right there. But then a lot of times, or even most times, we have to double stroke that color to get opacity, so that the blacks on the outline stay black. And like type and any other solid artwork, especially like with dark ink on a black shirt, you have to double hit that twice so that it fills in that shirt, and you don't see through it like it looks airy or anything. So that's why printers want to double stroke that. But so that I can't click off of that now. But that's why you want to make adjustments in here. So back to the circles. You see how this transition's much smoother? Still, we want to see a little bit more heavier in the shadow tone right there. Get it a little bit heavier, nicer, smoother transition again. But it does have this nice flow, so it's compensating for gain a lot. Here they can double stroke this in the middle, and it's not going to fill in as much. In fact, it might get at the 50% zone, it might get pretty accurate to 50%, I would suggest. And then so you see here, you got a nice smooth transition. There's no abrupt rings around there. So that's what I'm talking about. And then also, a side note, these corners in this test can be used to determine two things. One, if your squeegee pressure across the print is consistent. So you'll see the dots here will look the same up as the dots on this end, and the dots over here as well. And then the other thing is off contact, or not off contact, but your palette leveling, to make sure that you're not heavier on one's corner for some reason. Maybe there was a jam one day on the press, and while they were tri-locking it, and got a little bend in the, and if somebody accidentally, and I'm just throwing stuff out, but if somebody accidentally bumped this palette, because I've seen that happen before, and so these are going to be indicators to tell you if your palettes are out of level, or if your squeegee pressure is out of level. Also, more pressure on one side than the other. So there's just that there reminds printers when they see that to keep that at top of mind and look at the pressure and make sure that it's even when they are applying pressure. So that's what this test was for. Now, there's another test, the multicolor bitmap stochastic index test here. This one is to be burnt on, let's say, a 230 to a 300, maybe even a 150 mesh. At the 150 mesh, you're only going to expect to get this dot size down here, because these dots are very small. I'll show you they are pixel sized. And they're that way for a reason. So this is like the distressed texture that we had trouble with the other day. And then it needed revised, and because when artists create these raster files and use these files, they're just pulling them for wherever they got the distressed texture, and it's at like 300 resolution, which is standard, and everybody expects that to be the standard that we use as an artist for printing out files, and typically it is, but not for this kind of printing. And the reason I say that is because stochastic, or this size of dot, is determined strictly by the resolution. That's why I have 140 ppi on this. If you want to flip this, I'll show you. So it's 160 ppi, and so on down to 200, and we scroll down to 300, which is what everybody uses. Now the size of this dot is so small that when you get down into the negative range, those are just going to be solid. All these are going to just fill in solid. You can't hold that detail in the negative at 300 resolution. That's why we need to jump up here and output these bitmap files in the art file at a smaller or a lower resolution, which provides for a bigger dot, a bigger negative space. So you see there, you can clearly see negative space there. Same for this one, which is 140. Drastically lower resolution for a typical file, but this is what we need to work with if we're going to produce these one color prints of a dark ink on a light shirt and they need to double stroke it. This is all going to fill in solid unless you use a much lower resolution that's going to give you a bigger negative dot open area. So that's what this test is for. So I would like them to burn this on a 150 mesh and see where you're holding. Is it this one or is it this one? And then also hold it on a 230 mesh and a 300 mesh, because the 300 mesh, I believe we can actually hold this, but it's mostly in the positive dots, so that we want to hold this for like the simulated process colors. This is 260 resolution. It's going to be the 230 or maybe a 280 mesh. So for holding fine detailed dots. Now, what I would like to do one day is do an entire separation of simulated process, convert it to stochastic, which is all using all the same size dot, which gives you much finer image resolution and better than traditional dots, but you still have to do the separations the same way like simulated process so the colors blend together. But the other kicker is this is also best used when combining for simulated process on images that are highly textured. Like if you're trying to reproduce a watercolor print where it's got a lot of paper grain, and so you see a lot of, this is ideal for that. Even an oil painting or something with a lot of brush strokes in it, you can pick up the brush strokes and really hold that detail with this type of print. So that's my test. I now know that I need to make even a little bit more adjustment in this shadow tone range here and build this up just a little bit more so that we get a better transition. And that's that. Thank you. Well, there is one more thing, if I can still get in there. I may have, yeah. There it is. I'm still in it. The curves. So this is what I'm talking about in the curves. I'll go to Setup Properties, go to Adjust. This is our standard curve. That's why the blacks are not coming out fully black. Someone may have attempted this, assuming that they know that the blacks are going to fill in anyways, so they just wanted to help compensate and maybe open up some dots and put some dots there, but really your solids should be solids. And I've gotten revisions back that for these areas where my solids weren't solids, and this is kind of showing me why. The curves, my particular curve that I've been using as a test to evaluate is right here. It's coming up, and you see how mine is so different. Now this is where I'm talking about that I need to adjust and improve that transition a little bit, which, for example, maybe I might bring these up just a little but I don't know how fast that transition needs to be. Remember, my 50% area, because it's 50% right there where the dots really should be if there were no curve in here adjusted at all. It was just a straight line going from shadow to light. You got so much dot gain on the machine itself with the 3 heads throwing out ink to form the halftone dots. It just gains so much that we need to make this adjustment and get this right in the curves here. And so maybe that doesn't fill in so heavy like that. And then I would save this one, call it 4. And then I would load my job and print it, and this new test would come out. So I'm going to click apply. Run my new job in there again, my new halftone test. Call it number 2. I'm going to call it 3 because I think I already loaded in a number 2. No, I didn't. So that's pending. Rip it. So that's done. Now I'll go back here and add the job again. I deleted that by accident. I deleted the one I had. I'm looking to load it, not delete it. Yeah, so that was the 1 new curves. This is the 2. Open that up. New curves 2. So that slight adjustment I made left me with something similar to what we have on this one. I don't know, that looks so much like, yeah, this is the original curve, and I don't know why, even though that says, maybe I should have named it 3, because sometimes if you name a job, keep the job name the same and don't change it, and you've ripped it once already, the program seems to remember that old file that we want to overwrite. So I need to make sure the name is changed. So I'm going to delete this again. And then go back and be sure to re-rip that. Looking at, and delete this one. Yes. Delete, yes. Delete, yes. Cancel. Delete, yes. Now, I'll confirm that my curves are there. Click apply. OK. Add the job. I'm going to rename this 3. Click open. Rips it. Okay. Now I'll go back here and load this again. Open. Curves 3. Open. Enter full screen so we can see really well. Huh. Something's gone afoul. It's not changing, it's not recognizing. The new curve. Yeah, this is still the old curve, the original curve that we've been using. It didn't, for whatever reason, take my settings. So what I'll do is eventually create a new test folder, and then rather than toggle back and forth between changing between different curves, I'll apply a single saved curve to that folder setting. Anyway, I think we're done here, and I appreciate the opportunity to show you this. It just shows and justifies why we need to really look at the halftones for output and make adjustments to fine-tune those. And that's it. So thank you very much.